talking. I really like to workshop school council. This is why it's called school counseling, because we are all great resources for each other. So the problem that you may be having in your school, you may have found a perfect solution to. So please, everybody, share, talk. That's what this is all about. I do have a rough framework for the workshop, which is the 7 steps for building an engaged community. I've already handed out my notes, so that way, if we don't get through them all, you can look at them, because usually we get to number 1, and then the conversation starts. But I think it's way more important that we actually address what you guys want to know about, so I am perfectly happy to go off topic. Most of what I said, as I said, is on that sheet, so you can look at it later. If you have any questions, always feel free to call me. Welcome, come on in, this is the school council one. Okay, so I'm going to start the way I do every year when I do this workshop. How many of you are on your school council? Is there anybody here who is not on a school council? Oh good, we got some people here not on school council, fabulous. How many of you who are on your school council, or if you've been on school council in the past, how many of you think back to your very first school council meeting, the first one you ever attended? How many of you, when you walked into that meeting, felt it's a bit cliquey?
Yeah.
Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows everybody. Am I allowed to ask questions? Am I allowed to vote? How does this work, right? How many of you? Okay. Last year I did the same thing, and everybody put their hands up. Now, most of us here are on school councils. So hopefully, from now on, in your schools, that's not going to happen anymore, okay? Because hopefully, through working through this, this program today, we can come up with some ideas together to make sure that that brand new kindergarten parent who walks into that school council meeting goes, wow, this is a great place to be, and I really want to come back for a second meeting. I don't know how many school council members are lost, because you people who came back are probably the really brave ones. The ones who really, really, really wanted to be there because you overcame that cliquey feeling, that exclusive feeling, and you came back for more punishment. So what did you do differently? And how can we make sure that that person who didn't come back because they felt that way will come back the next time? So that's what hopefully we're going to be talking about today. Did you have a question? No? Okay. I'm seeing your hand up in the air. So I should say I am the school council chair at Monarch Park Collegiate in East End, Toronto. I was the school council chair at Wilkinson. Before then, I have been school council chair for almost 14 years now. So sooner rather than later, I will be out. So I do have on-the-ground experience as well. Both of the schools that my kids attended were very diverse schools. So we had all of the typical challenges of having a diverse student population in the school. And the high school that I'm at now actually has very diverse programming as well. So we have everything from a very high needs, special needs congregated class to the IB program. So you can imagine the range of parents and students we have in that school. So any questions you have, please feel free to share them. I am going to start now on the 7 steps for building an engaged community. And interrupt me, and I expect you to interrupt me. So, the first one that I write down there is you have to want it. And I think this actually comes back to all of the points that follow, okay? And it comes back to that first question I asked you. If your parents are showing up at your school council meeting and feeling like it's cliquey, that's telling them you don't want their involvement, right? You need to make sure that in your heart of hearts, you really do want parents there. Because you can be sending messages, well, we like this clique because we all work together really well, and you know, that troublesome parent over there, we know when she shows up, she's going to ask the hard questions, and she's going to cause problems. So if we could sort of just pretend like we don't see her, maybe we can get her to stop coming to the meetings. You really have to be aware of that. You have to be ready as a school council to accept all of the parents in your school. And some of them are hard to work with, okay? But we have to be brave. We have to find a way to work together to make sure that those parents feel that they're welcome. Why do you want an engaged community? I always look at it this way. If you've got a school with 500 kids, there's approximately twice as many parents. So you have access to 1,000 people who have skills and talents and information and can bring things into the school that you may not even think of. So by
That's really interesting though.
So if you can engage even half of those parents, look at the resources you have within your school, right? So that's one of the big reasons. You also want that sense of community. I really believe schools are, can be, and should be the hearts of our community. We have to reach out as school councils, not just to the parents in the school, but to the amazing community organizations out there, working more closely with public health, with your local community health center, with settlement workers, with immigrant organizations, with employment organizations. It's not just about the school, it's about the whole community. And the more you bring the community into the school, the more the school feels to be a part of that community. So when you're working on things, always think, is there somebody else we could be bringing in here that we can, how many of you have a community rep on your councils? Good. Who are they? Who do you have sitting as a community rep? Start with
grandparent.
A grandparent.
We have our local parish liaison.
Excellent.
Ours is a grandparent as well.
Grandparent.
A local banker?
Childcare.
Childcare. Interesting, eh? Look at the different, and 3 grandparents. That's,
Community health organization.
oh, yay, you see?
We used to have a sales rep from the builder, back when the subdivision was still being built. We had a sales rep from the builder who was part of it.
Wow.
We invited them. We specifically asked them if they wanted to be part of it.
But it's, and that's a really interesting way of doing it, right? Or using the local banker, okay? Local businesses, local religious organizations, anything that's local in the community. The idea is they're supposed to be bringing the community voice in, so they really should be. I like grandparents. One of the things I don't like to see is the school council chair, when they leave, the next year becomes the community rep, okay? You kind of need somebody new. A little new blood in there would not hurt. And I don't actually think, just because I am a parent who graduated from that school, I'm now a community rep. It's really good if you can sort of reach beyond that. I actually really like it if they don't have a child in the school. So the local businesses, the local developer, the local religious leader, anything that's sort of a little bit outside of the school, because they really need to be bringing that community voice in.
How do you get that little click to understand that though? When you're the one bringing that idea in and you're perceived as the young mom, and lovely that I've been blessed with those genetics of looking young, but my oldest is 14 and I have a voice and I have an opinion, and let's go beyond that. Let's go beyond what you've developed for 10 years with the same people. There's more to our community.
Yeah.
How do you get them to understand that?
You have to keep working at it.
No, you have to come in with more.
Yeah.
You have to come in with more of you.
Yes.
You come with more of you, you got more voice.
And when it comes to community, I mean, if you don't have a community rep, you are technically required to have them. So if the school council is saying, well, we don't want a community rep, as a member of school council, you have absolutely every right to point out, we have to have one.
Is there a document?
Yes.
That's what I need.
Where do you find it?
Regulation 612. Look up Regulation 612, it's right in there who needs to be on your school council. And it's all covered in there. They also have, the ministry has a school council guidebook which covers all of those rules, but it's definitely in there, so if somebody's saying it ain't true, it is. It's a regulation, it's the law.
But what happens if they put it in the bylaws that it's to be our parish priest, but he never comes?
Yeah,
Ever.
that happens.
Well, I always think, I'm also, okay, maybe I shouldn't say this in public. I'm a really good one for better to ask forgiveness than permission. I'm a volunteer on my school council. So if I have to have the parish priest and the parish priest doesn't show up, I'm adding another community member.
Yeah.
Fine, parish priest, you be one community member and we're bringing in the candy store operator who makes all the money off our kids at the end of the day, right? It's like, so that way, parish priest doesn't show up, you still have a community rep there. If parish priest does show up, you got 2. Hey, What's the problem with having 2 community reps? The more the merrier is what I figure.
Okay, so there can be more than one.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, whenever somebody says, well, that's against the rules, I say, go ahead, fire me. Like, I'm a volunteer. I mean, you have to follow rules and you have to understand that there's, there are ways that things work. But as volunteers, I think we really need to recognize that we also can say, you know what, this is what works for our school. And what works for your school is going to be very different from what works for my school. I'm at a high school, okay? It's like pulling teeth to engage parents in high school. So what do? We only meet every 2 months. Why? Our kids are getting bigger. The great thing, we don't fundraise, okay? Because the kids do it in high school. So the school council that I'm working at now looks very, very different from the school council that I was working with at the elementary school. A school council in Renfrew is going to look very different from a school council in downtown Toronto. And that's okay. That's what we need to do because our school councils need to reflect our community and need to work for the community that they're in. So I don't believe that there's any hard and fast rules that should apply to all school councils. The guidelines are there as guidelines if you need them. How many of you vote? How many of you at every school council meeting have votes?
No.
No, not everyone.
Fair number. Okay, I'm surprised. Do most of you work on consensus? Do most of your decisions get made by consensus?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm seeing a little here. And some school councils are dysfunctional, right? Like sometimes you do have to put everything to a vote because you've got that one parent who wants to, and that's fine if you have to. But most of us work on consensus, right? We talk about it, we raise the pros, we raise the cons. We try to do integrative thinking, right? And if you're not, you should be. Because that's the way you keep everybody happy. Compromise is not a dirty word, right? It's okay to say, I like this aspect of your idea, we can bring in that aspect. It may not be exactly what I was looking for as a parent, but parts of me are represented in that decision, and I'm probably going to be happy with the results in the end. So if you're doing a lot of voting, you may want to look at how it's working out, but people say, well, who gets to vote? My attitude, again, as it has forgiveness and permission, it's probably not the way they expected to do it. At my high school, if you are a living, breathing human being and you show up at the meeting, you have the right to speak and to vote, right? I'm not going to say, well, this is your first school council meeting, so I'm afraid you're not allowed to vote. You're not important enough yet, right? If that's a parent at the school, absolutely they should be allowed to vote.
Yep, so there's no hard fast rule about this voting stuff? Because our school, it's been, we have to have a vote and only those people who can vote and the other people can't.
If you've got your bylaws set up like that, you have to follow the bylaws. I'm going to be really honest now. We don't have a constitution at my high school council. Okay? So technically, if you don't have a constitution, you have to follow the guidelines that are in Regulation 612, which basically covers the same things as your constitution, right? You must have a chair. You must, So those positions are outlined. But as a volunteer organization, if it's not working the way you're doing it, then say, let's revisit our constitution. Let's change what it looks like, because you can do that. That's what part of your job is as the school council.
Actually, by law, every 2 years, we review that constitution.
Every 2 years.
But you can make amendments every year.
Yeah.
And in regards to voting, I see what you're saying, the consensus. Generally, any council meeting I've been involved in, we do a huge discussion before, so everyone gets to say whether they're a elected council member or not. So the thing that if your bylaws state that only your council members are voting, that's not to sort of negate the importance of anybody else's opinion, but I think parameters are put in place for a reason, because otherwise things could go crazy. Like, what if there's a particular issue that night you're discussing, so somebody brings 15 people in to vote, sway it a certain way. Whereas if you follow the voting principle, then you'll hear from these 50 people, but they're not going to totally sway the outcome of your vote. You'll get a true, do you know what I mean?
Yep, no, absolutely.
So I think there's something to be said for following a process.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not a formal person. I love discussion. Anybody who knows me, I'm a talker, and I love to listen to other talkers. So you have to allow that to happen, but I think there is a place for actually having the voting process, because then it legitimizes what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think particularly if there's something controversial, that's where you do need to follow the rules.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the things that happen, it's not going to be a big deal. Most people, you'll be able to reach it by consensus. If there's something controversial, I always joke, if you're worried about parent involvement, threaten to close the school. Watch how quick that parent involvement just goes like this in that school. But something like that, where it's going to be controversial, you probably want to have a set of rules that you're following. But for the most part, I think most school councils work pretty well together, and they can find a way to make sure that
And
it's,
the
and
ones
if they're
that
not, they need to
sabotage?
address it. So go ahead.
And the ones that sabotage?
And the ones,
Yeah, seriously, the ones that sabotage the council, they discredit the ones that have been working, and nothing gets done for that year.
yeah.
We get new elections, nobody shows up. The person who discredited everybody is now the chair. And look at me, I'm doing all this wonderful stuff for the school.
Yeah, but I mean, it's hard, right? We all have to work with all sorts of different people. So when you run into that, what have others done when they've had the difficult parent?
Well, we've, this is years ago, but we established norms for the meetings so that the whole idea of was that the ideas are out there. It's not any one person's idea or anyone is in control of the situation, but it's something to be discussed, to be bantered about. But I believe that the regulations state that the membership is made up of every child, every parent of a child in the school. So that's your whole membership. And I think this is the very difficult position that school councils are in. However big you are, however small you are representing all the parents of that school. And it is a very fine line that you have to tread to make sure that you're considering the people who come and the people who don't come. That you have to make sure that you are considering their viewpoints.
Heather.
And I'm just going to build on that. When my children were in elementary school, one year we had this parent who, the first two meetings, she kept going on and on about a problem with her child that was really specific to her child, and it didn't really apply to the rest of the council. So the third meeting, and I happened to be chair at that time, I spoke to the principal and said, you know, we really can't let this go on because nobody wants to hear this. And he said, no, I know. So the third meeting, at the start of the third meeting, we said, we're only discussing things that apply to the school population as a whole. If you have a complaint that's regarding your individual child, please feel free to take it up with the principal outside the meeting. She kind of got a sad look on her face, but she went with it. And when she started to bring it up, the principal said, I'll be happy to talk to you
After the
after.
meeting.
But isn't that understood as a council?
But you know what?
No,
It's
no,
not.
parents
Okay,
don't.
at my high school,
Yeah.
the first, when we had just got the school council off the ground,
Clear it
the
every
first
time.
school council meeting after report cards, I kid you not, we had 3 IB parents show up with their kids' report card to the school council meeting wanting to discuss it. Okay, so Joanne from Ottawa, who's not here this year, but she's always here, has this great thing that she always says. If it's about personal or personnel, it's not to be dealt with at school council meeting. So if you hate your child's teacher, you don't bring it up at school council meeting. If you're worried about your child's math mark, school council plan is not the place, okay? That you take up with the principal or the classroom teacher. And you can be fierce and firm as a school council chair about that, because it is totally inappropriate to be talking about personal or personnel issues at the school council. And I think that's the other thing. When you have a difficult parent, you really hope you have a strong chair, because it really is, I hate to say it, you school council chairs, it's your job to manage that meeting and to make sure that the parent's not controlling the agenda, not overriding, and it can be hard. I've had to work with them myself, but you do. And if you're having real problems, you can bring the principal in to help too, because they are there to help. So,
Or
and-
quiet ones too. You want to encourage
Courage.
the people who are not contributing to the meeting, but they're there, they come. The quiet ones in the corner that have the probably fantastic
sometimes have the
ideas.
best ideas, but they're just not brave enough to speak about them. So, and that's
We just had to be patient, and now I'm co-president, just saying. Had to wait our turns, as you would say, I had to throw that in. Because I'm like, yeah, I was one of those quiet people, and I'm like, Lottie, when are you gonna step down so I can do some real or help, or, you know what I mean? 'Cause
well,
like
and
you
that's
said
the other thing is
when you mentioned
sometimes
12 years, 14 years, and I go, please tell me you're not like 14 years of
The one chair.
president of the council, because I can tell you, boy, that was a long 14 years.
Yeah, I still am.
Of things
I'm
not-
begging, I beg every year
But
for
of
somebody to
things
take over.
exactly this, totally thrown out the trash, and it's frustrating as a newbie or whatever, going, oh, can you listen, I got an idea, right?
I remember the first year that I wasn't a school council chair, but I finally gave it up at the elementary school for the last 2 years because I really didn't want to do it anymore. And when you actually refuse to do it, that's when they find somebody to come in and take over. I've discovered it really does work. But I remember the first meeting that the new school council chair had, and it was September, our first meeting. And I see, our clique, there's the good old school council clique there, and one brave kindergarten parent, right? Never been to a meeting. New school council chair starts off the meeting. Okay, so I'd like to approve the agenda, the minutes from the meeting in June. Can I have a motion to approve? And I'm looking at that kindergarten parent, and she's looking at me, and I sort of smiled. I'm still an interfering person, even though I'm not the chair. I said, sorry, I just have a quick question for the new parent down there. Do you know what a school council is? She had not a clue. Okay, not a clue what the school council was. I said, so maybe what we can do is start with explaining the school council and what it is.
Or how about
explain
giving that last thing about the approval, so I can at least read it,
Yeah.
right? We got nothing, okay,
And
so
explaining-
I'm sitting here and you're approving something.
As
I
you
haven't
sit
even
here,
been
new
to.
parent, explaining to that new parent, and we let you vote. Or unfortunately, you're not allowed to vote, but we would love to hear your opinion. Whatever the rules are, so that they know what they can do. Okay. I used to be a lawyer. I'm okay now. But I went into my first school council meeting and was intimidated. I had never been to a meeting where Robert's Rules of Orders were used. There's lots of parents out there. So sometimes the technical stuff doesn't work, and you can actually do Robert's Rules of Order without saying those big ugly words, okay? Okay, here's the agenda for the meeting. Are there any additions to it? No, so I said, is everything covered on here? Great. Okay, you've just approved the agenda, right? You're talking about fundraising for the playground. So it sounds like we've decided we want to raise $10,000 for the playground. Is that right? Do we have a consensus on that? Everybody nods? Guess what? You just made a decision, and you didn't have to say, can I have a motion, and can somebody second it, and can we all now vote on it?
Yeah.
Right? Yes. There are times where you're going to have a motion and a seconder and an official vote. It's usually when something's getting ugly, right? But for the most part, you can avoid that really scary language that can really be a barrier to parents, particularly parents who may not be in the working world or who may not have that kind of experience. So, because it can be really scary when you use language like that. See, I'm skipping all over the place. I'm getting to these points.
Jackie, is there, I know with RC's active, I thought this was kind of widespread. It's that you can only be a chair, co-chair for 2 years.
Depends on your rules.
Oh, so it's.
Constitution, yep.
It's nothing on the parent engagement in terms of administrative that.
The only dictated positions are chairs of PIC committees. The new legislation is that a PIC chair can only hold their position for two-year terms.
Yes, so for.
That's the only one they dictate, but in
In school
schools,
councils, you can die in the position. I'm sure there are some that have.
As long as you keep having kids.
As long as you keep having kids, I mean.
I'd like to address the succession planning in school councils. I mean, I think that seems to be the thing where if you've got to wait for somebody to die or their kid to get out of the system in order to move forward in the school council, something's wrong. So if we can actually look at the school bylaws and actually implement succession planning into that, that would eliminate the having to hurt feelings of, oh, she's
her life.
Yeah. Or feeling like you've got to shove somebody out in order to see things change. So I think...
And it's also, as school councils, it's the wisest thing you can invest your time and energy in. You are working hard as a school council to make that school better. Do you really want it to all fall apart when you walk away?
Yeah.
Of course you don't. So you need to be getting that brand new kindergarten parent that came in there very bravely to say, great, so this year you're going to sit there and you're going to listen. You may not say very much, but hopefully by next year you're ready to take on the secretary position. And then by the year after that, you might be willing to be the chair. And I am more than happy to give it up when it comes time, right? So making sure that people understand that there is potential there. And that I'm keeping track, so go ahead.
I thought that there was a study on school councils. I haven't been a member of one. And one of the most successful ones seem to do a couple of things that sort of precedes or procedure, and that is potluck, that everybody brings something. There is nothing more community building than people bringing food. And the people that are council members at the beginning, they brought a little more and a little better than maybe they would ordinarily as individuals to kind of encourage the feeling. So that's one thing. Bring food, have food. We're humans, it makes a difference. And the other thing is, have people sit at round tables and have discussions, because that's where that quiet person sometimes gets to represent the table and has a chance to feel confident about their voice.
Absolutely, really good points. I want to come back to the community building.
Okay, the assumption was you wanted new people coming in. So if I have our sabotage chair now, and the email came out saying, we're having the elections, you know, it's gonna be on this date, and I'm going, they're not even telling them what the elections are about. They're not even telling them anything. So I emailed them, I said, well, who are being nominated? Like, how can you have the elections on that day and you haven't told anyone who you can vote for? I'm a very sad school.
Well, I mean, and that's where then you need to do some work, right?
The first day I went in there, I said, okay, let me see. I'm the non-custodial parent. Let me see what the SAC is so I can help my child. I mean, there's 5 people here and 3 of them are from the school. You want to be co-chair? Okay, how do you do that?
When I came into my high school, first meeting, there was me and one other parent. And I said, and the poor principal, Rob the Wonder principal, whom I adore, and he said, you know, for 2 years I've been trying to get the school council off the ground. I can't get parents to come out. And I just said, well, it looks like you got your 2 co-chairs anyway. That's that problem solved. Well, the poor woman beside me had just moved from Nova Scotia, didn't know anything even about Ontario's education system. She said, I just came to actually find out more about how the school system works here in Ontario. I said, you learn a lot on the ground when you're participating, let me tell you. So I actually suckered her into doing it. We eventually built it up. We now get about 15 people coming out. But that's what the reality is, right? I mean, we have to work at it. It's not easy. It doesn't come easily. But I want to come back to the food thing. This was just after, this was many years ago now, just after they started doing the programs where you can actually apply for money for parent engagement. So there was a superintendent speaking. This was in a board that shall remain nameless. And then I was going to come up and speak. So the superintendent gets up and he says, so, and you know, you guys have heard about these programs and I think it's really great, but I have heard that there are some schools who are using it for things like barbecues. That is not the intention of these programs. These programs are to educate parents, to make them better able to help their children succeed in school. I wonder if they go, I have to say I'm a huge fan of the barbecue, right? Because if you want parents to be involved in your school, that intimidated kindergarten parent is way more likely to come to a meeting if she's met you in the hallway and you said, oh, you've got Mrs. Smith. Oh, my son loved Mrs. Smith. She's such a great teacher. And then the next time you see her, I see you bake those things for the class party. It'd be great if we could have you bring some of that stuff to the fun fair. You know what? You'd be a really great, you should come to the school council meeting. I think you've got a lot to say. You'd be a great addition, right? People don't like to come to meetings. It's scary. It can be intimidating. If they know there's a friendly, familiar face there, it goes a huge way. How do you do that? By going to barbecues and by having social events and movie nights. Our movie nights at our school used to be hilarious. Not a single person in the gym actually watched the movie. The kids were all running around the front, screaming and yelling, having a wonderful time, and all the parents are standing at the back talking to each other, right? What does that mean? When we call for a school council meeting, those parents are more likely to come because they've already been talking to school council members. It really does work. Joe this morning, he's the other wonder principal that I now know and love, talked about that. You can have all the technology and all the communication skills in the world if you don't build that relationship first, and it often has to be face to face, right? If you don't build that relationship first, it's not going to work. You're not going to engage those parents.
There's another piece of the equation that was talked about. It's not just about getting the parents, it's also about building a relationship with your principal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have an adversarial relationship with your principal, nothing you do will work. So that's, I think, something that people need to focus on. I mean, I'm lucky. I'm also chair of my SEC, and I have a great rapport with my principal, who's very involved in shifting the culture towards engagement. So that's great.
Mm-hmm.
As buy-in for most of the community things I come up with. But I've heard horror stories from others that have had real issues with dealing with the principals. So do you have any strategies or ideas for that?
First of all, you're absolutely right. To me, the principal makes the school. If you have a good principal, that principal, I actually heard somebody say that the principal's #1 job is to engage parents, which just about gave me a heart attack. It's like, no, the principal's #1 job to me is to work with students. #2, staff. After that, worry about parents. But there's a lot of focus on parents. Principals are actually scared of us.
Yeah.
Okay. If
Can you blame
talk
them?
to teachers coming out of teachers college about to start their career, what's their biggest fears? Assessment, testing. How do I test those kids? How do I make sure I'm assessing them fairly? And parents. Okay. I listen to a lot of parents. Some of them are on parent involvement committees, some of them are on school councils, some of them are parents on the ground. They assume an adversarial relationship. It's parents against the system. We have an online community where we tell people to use your real name because we want you to talk to us online the way you would talk to us face to face. So if you want to call me a fat, ugly bee, you better be prepared to do it to my face too, not hiding behind a pseudonym, right? So as a result of that, it's actually worked. People are very nice to each other and they use their real names. But one person, so we started a discussion about using real names because some people were saying, well, I can't. A teacher in the online community said, well, teachers don't want to use their real names because the parents will come back at them. Principals don't want to use their names because they're scared of the parents and the teachers. Parents don't want to use their real names because they're afraid the teachers are going to take it out on their kids. I wanted to cry. I'm like, is this what our education system has come to? It's an us against them mentality for every category?
Yeah.
Whatever happened to working together? So what I would say is when you get to that point, this is where we all have to take out the picture of our kids, right? We let our adult things, just like in that panel discussion, where's the kids, right? We start thinking in adult terms about adult issues and it's not fair. And who's getting forgotten? The kids. We have to keep bringing it back to the kids. So when you start getting wrapped up in those adult issues or that principal versus thing, we have to find a way to work together for those kids. It doesn't always come easily. And sometimes you have a really obstreperous principal, or you have a really obstreperous school council, or you hope you can find some common ground. And if you don't, that should be your first priority. Work relentlessly to get, because until you do, it's never going to work. You are not going to get new parents showing up to a school council meeting when what's happening is that the parents are fighting with the principal, right?
Yeah.
That really disengages people when they see ugliness and anger in the school. It's like, don't want to be part of that. Again, I'm a volunteer. I like to do stuff that I enjoy doing on my own time. If you make it mean and nasty and like work, I'm out of there. I have no interest in this.
We never had mean and nasty, we just have people just drop out.
Just drop out? Well,
That's
because...
it. And then no new ones are coming in because there's no invitation.
Yeah.
So it affects, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
oh, good, yes, you were at the back.
I have a question. I'm kind of in a similar situation with the high school. I'm fourth year chair at the parent council at the elementary school. My son's in grade 10. So I was at a meeting with the principals and chairs in our family schools with the supervising principal. And the high school principal decided to sit in to approach me to be chair of the parent council at the high school because they have no parent council at the high school. So how do you, like myself, I'm very involved. It's a full-time job, as you know, being chair. You know, I kind of left, you know, the high school stuff. Okay, it's getting bigger, but how do you get the parents to come out at the high school level?
Potlucks, you're doing it.
Potlucks, no. I'm going to be honest. It's really hard. It's also perfectly normal. Okay, I hate to break it to you, but when your kids go to university, they're actually adults, and there are no school councils. There's a natural progression of freeing our children from our clutches, right? It starts in high school. So I think it's perfectly normal that the high school council is not as active. I think it's perfectly normal that there's fewer parents involved in it. I know I'm skipping all over these, but we're hitting all of the points. Number 7 on my list is lower expectations and be patient. How many of you have all 900 parents on your school council and showing up to every meeting? What, nobody? How many of you want 900 parents showing up to every one of your school council meetings, right? It would be pretty difficult to run a school council if they were all there. So if you're only getting 5 people out to your school council meeting, you can still have an effective school council. If you're getting 25 people out, you can still have an effective school council. If you're only getting 5 people out, you may not be able to fundraise, and that's okay. Then you make that decision as a council. You're not able to fundraise. If parents get upset that you're not fundraising, my favorite thing, when somebody comes up to me as the school council chair and says, you should, I immediately turn around and go, great idea, why don't you run with that? So, because they expect you to do a lot. But really, if parents want something to happen, they need to come forward and they need to put their money where their mouth is. So a lot of the time I turn it back to parents, which gets them coming out and saying, you run with it. You want to set up that? Great. I'll get you a committee if anybody else is interested. We stopped last year. I said, I'm not booking any more speakers, right? Because we were paying a fortune to bring in really great speakers for parents. We invited the entire community, not just our school, and 30 parents showed up. When you're paying $5,000 for a speaker for 30 parents, it's like, unless I have a guaranteed attendance of 100 parents, it's not really worth doing. So if you can't get that buy-in, the really important thing is, when you only have a small school council, is that you are communicating out to all of the parents that are not there, with a way for them to communicate back. So have an email address.
Or we actually, this year, we're posting it on our school website.
School website, Facebook.
And like, not the whole thing, but at least the minutes that are posted.
Facebook pages, sure. Have your school council set up a Facebook page. Twitter, okay? All of these things. Have your school council, school council chairs, we don't have anything to do. Do a blog. I mean, I always joke that if you're going to communicate, you must communicate in every way possible. Phone trees, email, Facebook, Twitter, face-to-face, signs in the windows of the school. I always joke with principals, if you know semaphore, up on that roof with those flags and get it going, because somebody out there might speak semaphore, right? The more methods you use, the more parents you reach, and make sure they have a way, because lots of parents never want to go to a school council meeting, but they might want to say, when you say we're talking about fundraising for, I always do fundraising, for the playground, they might say, I'd rather see that money spent on library books. So if all of a sudden you get 25% of your parents responding, I'd actually rather see it spent on library books, you may have to revisit your decision. Give them an opportunity to be heard, whether or not they're at the meeting, and I think you've met your job as a school council.
One other thing that we used to do was have a table, an information table for the school council at the parent interview night. So any opportunity where the parents are coming into the school, I made announcements shamelessly or whatever, but I made announcements at school concerts and encourage people, practically wear a button, ask me about school council.
Absolutely.
And to make sure that your executive is identifiable. We posted pictures of who the executive of the school council were. We put out information about the people running for the jobs before the elections, so that the people were aware. So.
Think of the most common events at school that parents show up for. Curriculum night, parent-teacher interviews, and the concerts. At every one of those events, sports, if anything is big in your school, if anything pulls in more than 20 parents, you should have a school council member in the hallway saying, hi, you met me, I'm on the school council, hi, how are you? Would you like your email? I now have 450 people on my email list for my high school. How did I do it? Going relentlessly to parent-teacher interview night. Hi, are you on our email? Hi, are you on our email? 450 parents later, I got there. Yes, there are definitely easier ways. Try to get your principal to agree to put in a form at the beginning of the year giving permission to share with the school council. Next year, I swear, that's going to happen. But
Really?
it
If
really.
it does, can you tell me how you managed to get them to do
Okay.
it? Because
I keep suggesting it and they never do it, but then I keep forgetting when they send them out. It's like, oh, I forgot to send in that form. So it's actually my fault.
They did that last year, well, they've done it every year up until this year, where they've sent out, volunteer, do you wanna volunteer for anything, school council, all
oh
of
no,
that.
the school does
But it
it,
took
but they
this-
won't share with the
Yeah.
school council.
Oh, well,
they
they gave
can't,
us a
right,
master
yeah.
list last year, but it took them 3 months to go through all the information, it was just too much, so they didn't.
So how do you get the information if the principal won't share?
Well, because they send home the data verification sheets at the beginning of the
Yeah,
school year.
yeah.
You check the box, or other parents do, give the email address. Now, we can't go in and see who did it, because that's a
Privacy issue.
Absolutely. No, I should clarify, that is a separate form, and absolutely, they should not be sharing that information with the school council.